Hey, it's Soul, and today I want to share my experience with Mage Tower Time Walking as a Protection Paladin. It's not exactly a guide with tips or tricks, but you might pick up a few things as we go. As usual, subscribe for more gaming content, like the video if it's cool, and if you want an uncut playthrough, use the navigation bar to skip ahead. For talents, I went with Blessed Hammer, Crusader's Judgment, Fist of Justice, Cavalier, Divine Purpose, Consecrated Ground, and Righteous Protector. Blessed Hammer is for independent holy power generation. The Double Judgment is just way more useful for DPS. I picked Fist of Justice over Blinding Light because I just prefer the hard stun every 40 or so seconds as opposed to the 2-minute AoE disorient. Double Horse is a no-brainer. I went with Divine Purpose because I needed to heal myself more than anything. Consecrated Ground is there for the snare, and Righteous Protector is so I can get an extra Avenging Wrath or two. Now onto the gear. The Mage Tower version of Time Walking follows Legion Time Walking rules. This is just a quick reminder. So your level will scale down to 45, expansion features are disabled entirely, gear, enchants, and gems over an item level of 50 will scale down. So with that in mind, I opted to craft PvP gear from Pandaria while using a relic of the past 4 to boost its item level to an item level of 48. I pumped that gear full of bold crimson spinel gems for some primary strength. I didn't throw in a meta gem because the item level of the helmet was 48, and the good meta gems needed an item level of 50, so I was kind of screwed. I happened to use a Hellscream's Doomblade Heirloom for the 2 sockets, and I enchanted that with Crusader. Now, not everyone can have access to this weapon because this came from the end of Siege of Orgrimmar, which is kind of a bummer. You can't get it anymore, but I don't think it's a huge deal. I used my regular cloak, neck, and rings because I couldn't find anything cheap. I also used a cheat death trinket from Castle Nathria, and as an engineer I used this mechanical dragonling and enchanted myself with a goblin glider. I later learned that another heirloom, a Groundtooth Warhorn, it would be really good for this fight, given the bonus damage to demons and the near 100% uptime after it first procs, but oh well, maybe in the next challenge. But keep in mind, this also is an heirloom that is no longer attainable unless you were playing through the end of I believe it was Warlords of Draenor content. Wowhead has a pretty extensive guide on good enchants, consumables, and food buffs to use. I invite you to take a look at that, and I'll have a link to that below. I happen to focus my secondary stats on crit, so my crafted gear had crit on it, my trinkets you can see here had crit, cogwheels, and I used the food buff for even more. And this gave me about 23 or so % crit, which I guess isn't a whole lot, but apparently it helped. I also used a potion of prolonged power, a Shadowlands DPS flask, and drums. So you could say that all in all, like, I tried, but I didn't blow the bank to be super optimal. There's like a lot more that I could have done to make this fight a little bit easier. And finally, I used deadly boss mods for alerts and notifications. Couple more things before I get to the commentary. The changes between the original and the time walking versions of this encounter aren't super extensive, but it did change up the strategy a little bit, mostly because of class changes. Before, I had a lot more speed, like just run speed, between the Sephu's Legendary and Bear Tartar, and I think there was something else that I missed. I had my 2 charges of Divine Steed, but that's about it, and I had to kind of sort of plan around that. My self-healing isn't nearly as passive either. Before, I could rely on my artifact weapon to give me a decent damage bubble, and had a defensive cooldown, so I found myself using a lot more self-healing than normal. And keep in mind, the self-healing was also off the global cooldown at the time. And maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if I did more damage too, which means I would have had to self-heal even less. According to my chat during stream, I completed the challenge in 27 attempts. Now, it's impossible for me to say that the encounter is easier or harder than it was before. I completed the original challenge about a month or so into patch 7.2. So in a way, I got it when it was at its most difficult outside of hotfixes. I got a dozen or so tries in during the PTR the other month, and it didn't feel very different from now on live, but consider that I had 400 attempts in the Legion challenge as I learned each of the phases and the abilities and the timings and all of that, and that hasn't changed. So this was more like relearning how to ride a bike. Outside of class changes, the fight wasn't very different really, so let's just get to the commentary. So here we are, Mage Tower time, and I'll be frank, This was a bad pull. You're gonna see later when I just give you guys like all the footage with my voice, with me talking and everything. Like this happened to be a really bad pull. But kind of as usual, you would want to start off with cooldowns. I guess one thing to note, another small change, is that because of the way consumables work, you can't pre-pot anymore. So I had to save my portion of prolonged power. You can kind of see it all the way down here. I had to save that for when I'm actually fighting Cruel. So I at least kick off with whatever cooldowns I can. Immediately throw in a judgment, try to throw, my judgment, hammer of wrath, try to get some DPS in until stuff starts to spawn. You can see that eyeball like kind of all the way back there. And I guess I felt conditioned. I want to try to clear eyeballs as quickly as possible and preferably get it all in one shot. That was kind of the idea when I wanted to have higher crit, in the hopes that I'd be able to get a crit on those things and I wouldn't have to worry about using another global on them to take them down, or even worse, I'd have to run out. But I'd have to do that a lot during this fight. So you can see right there, I took down that eyeball. Go me. I have to run out of that Aura of Decay. Like, shucks, I can only stay in there for maybe like 10, 12 seconds or so before I have to run out, and otherwise have to wait for this to go away. For those who aren't super familiar with the fight, those little glowy light things, they heal your NPC, they heal you, they stun all the enemies, they cleanse bad stuff and all of that. But the idea, of course, again, if you're not familiar, complete the encounter while also protecting Velen and Corvus. Although Corvus, he's not really doing anything. You basically protect Velen, and he helps you like a little bit, but it's not super reliable. So Drain Life is something that I typically try to save my Hammer of Wrath for, and that's why I wanted to have the shorter cooldown of that, so that way I could always have something at range. Blinding Light is just not something that I would be able to really rely on, whereas this I could. So here you can see like ads are starting to spawn, and they went straight for Velen, and it's pretty inconsistent. I'm used to them going straight for me whenever possible. So what I would try to do is try to make sure that when ads come out, I'd run out, go to Velen, try to lay down a consecration, so that way when the ads do come out, they'll hit the concentration and come straight to me. That's something that I couldn't really take advantage of as much during Legion, but I can now, so maybe that's like a small advantage. But whenever it doesn't work out like this, it really messes up the timing, because I don't want to just run out whenever I want, because I don't want to go back in because of that doo-doo debuff thing that reduces my maximum life. So that's never good. So here, I'm trying. Yeah, so I end up picking up the ads, clear out that eyeball, and I'm waiting for that debuff to clear. The moment it does clear, that's when I jump back in and try to take down the ads. You want to bring down the ads pretty quick because they cause a stacking debuff. You see that I threw my shield at that eyeball, and that's not the way to go. And here I end up using that orb thing at the worst time. There's like nothing going on. It's just Velen's getting his butt kicked, and so I end up stunning the ads and everyone. And unfortunately, that just doesn't work out. It's definitely not an ideal time to hit that button. Like, this was just bad. I got knocked back there, and I happened to pop my Goblin Glider because I just didn't want to die. Which again is like, oh, what am I doing? This is just so bad. So right now things are looking chaotic. Ads are going to Velen again. I'm forced to run in, and I have to use that thing to stun everyone, get some aggro. You can see the concentration right under Velen. So I have the aggro. I'm trying to avoid everything, and now I'm just trying to clear things out. I want to try to save my Shield of the Righteous charges for when those ads come out, so I can like nail them all really in very quick succession before the debuff gets any bigger. But there is a lot going on at once. I need to try to control that debuff. I need to dodge those Infernals because they're constantly trying to do a big kind of shockwave. And if I get knocked back, especially when they're at full health, then I'll get nailed and I'll totally get knocked the heck out. So so ads are once again going for Velen. Only one of them happens to come to me, but now I'm able to get them over after throwing a shield. But I got to run back out again. The usual stuff. And so this is kind of the routine, having to juggle and manage these different debuffs all at once. So you can see right here, I'm running out, and I hate having to do that. I'd prefer to be able to throw out a judgment, but that particular eyeball is just in a really bad spot, and I wanted to take it out while the room was fairly empty. You can see here, it's just a lot of trouble trying to go around. At some point, I even used my cheat death. I'm not quite sure how that happened, and now it's just a mess. So here I pop the orb, stun everyone, throw it on concentration to make sure I get some of the aggro, and the mini boss is about to go down. I'm just trying to get a little bit more. Once they go down, all the eyeballs despawn and I can go to town. I pop my potion of prolonged power as well as my drums, and from now I just start going to town. So here's where not having the speed boosts of Bear Tartar really come into play, because those little rod things that push you back, I can't really do anything about it. Anyway, I just start DPSing, I throw a stun, and you can see that I interrupted something that I believe was called Twisted Reflection. That is a debuff. If it's cast on me, the fight is pretty much over, because if I'm afflicted with that debuff, then the boss will heal himself every time he hits me. So I need to either bubble that off or cleanse it. It's just really troublesome. The goal here is to not die from Annihilate. Annihilate is a really heavy hit, and it causes a debuff. It stacks. It makes future Annihilates hit even harder, and there's not much I can do about that. I can't bubble that debuff away or anything like that, at least. Well, maybe I'll correct myself in a little bit. But it hurts really bad, and I needed to time my mitigation so that way I'd be able to survive Annihilates. Now, when I was doing this fight early on, I found that my Guardian of the Ancient Kings, my major cooldown, it still wasn't effective. And I thought that I would be able to use it on like the third or maybe the fourth Annihilates, but that wasn't happening. So I ended up using it a little bit early, I believe, on this fight. So I first start off, I think I already got hit by it once. I first use my normal mitigation stuff. So here I'm just using my normal mitigation. I believe this is the first one. You can see everything's still happening. Infernos are still coming. I'm being pushed really much harder than I was back during Legion, but I still need to protect Velen. Whenever the boss does his big stomp, that's usually my time where I want to make some distance, try to pull away from the boss and away from that nasty green stuff. And then here's another Annihilate. Here I had already used my Guardian of the Ancient Kings here. And in this case, I survived it. So now what I'm going to do, so here we go. I was able to use my bubble. Yeah, so I used the bubble for this Annihilate. And then the plan is to use my Ardent Defender for the next one. After that, my Forbearance will come off, and then I'll be able to use my Blessing of Protection. That's kind of the idea here. But you can see, like, things are like... This phase did feel like a little bit harder because of those rods. It was harder to avoid. It's probably a better idea for me to just kind of go around them if I happen to have my horse. But if I'm using my horse, I just want to try to push through that as well. So here's the other Annihilate. Here I use my Ardent Defender, barely alive, being pushed, and then but I still managed to hit that orb. And that's it. So actually, I got this even faster. I managed to get this without having to use that extra Blessing of Protection. Before, I believe the fight was like a little bit longer from other pulls, but that was it. Whew. So it's still a really hectic fight. There's still like a lot going on here, but this one still turned out to be a lot of fun when I completed it. Ooh, explodey. And that's it. So I'm gonna have the actual fight go through with some of the live commentary and everything, and that'll be it for me. So I hope that this is helpful. If anything, if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in below. I'll try to help you guys out as much as I can, because that's what we're here to do. And that'll be it. See you guys for the next thing. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy. There's only one that matters. And when I'm done, I'm done. Come here. No. Oh, God, I hate you. Stupid ghost shits. He's already hell almost dead. Sheesh. that was a bad one. Why did I even bother doing that? Oh, look at another. Look at that. Awful. This is not a win. Nope, 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 nope. Come on, hit it, hit it. Ah. Sheer stubbornness is compelling me to keep going. Come on, you stupid ads. By comparison, this is taking me like forever. Oh man. So bad. Oh, and my cheat death went off. Well, at least that one kind of works. Oh god, hit it. Come on. Ah, bitch!
He is overloading himself with power.
And that was a bad pull